Something shocking has just rocked the tennis world and it's spreading like wildfire. Jeļena Ostapenko, a player long known for her explosive temper and fiery clashes, has now been hit with the one punishment no athlete ever wants to face: a ban. The announcement has ignited a storm of reactions from players everywhere, and the fallout is unlike anything tennis has seen in years. The question is, what happens next? The ban that shook tennis. When news of Jeļena Ostapenko's ban first hit the headlines, it felt like the sport had been struck by an earthquake. This wasn't just a fine for an on-court outburst or a slap on the wrist for breaking etiquette. It was the kind of disciplinary action that instantly rewrites a player's career. For years, fans and analysts had whispered about Ostapenko's fiery temperament, her running feuds with opponents, and the way she seemed to push the limits of acceptable behavior. But nobody thought it would reach this level. The announcement dropped like a thunderclap in the middle of the US Open buzz. Social media lit up within minutes. Hashtags exploded and the tennis community found itself divided. Some said it was about time, that her repeated incidents had crossed too many lines and the sport needed to take a stand. Others argued the punishment was too harsh, that every generation has had its rebels, from John McEnroe's meltdown to Serena's clashes with umpires. But the difference here was the consistency. Ostapenko's controversies weren't one-off explosions in the heat of competition. They were part of a pattern. From fiery press conferences to bitter post-match confrontations, she seemed to leave sparks wherever she went. And while that unpredictability made her matches must-watch television, it also built a growing list of critics who questioned her sportsmanship. When the ban became official, it wasn't just a penalty, it was a statement. The governing bodies were telling players and fans alike that the image of the sport mattered, that tennis was bigger than one player, no matter how talented. For Oako, who once stood on the podium as a French Open champion, the fall was steep. From being celebrated as a future star to being sidelined in disgrace, her journey became a cautionary tale in real time. And that's why this moment has the entire tennis world buzzing. Because in a sport that prides itself on tradition and respect, a ban of this magnitude sends shockwaves far beyond the court. The locker room divide. If you really want to measure the impact of a ban, you don't look at the press releases. You look inside the locker rooms. And when Ostapenko's punishment was announced, the divide among her fellow players couldn't have been clearer. For some, it was pure validation. They had long felt that her constant disputes and harsh remarks weren't just disrespectful but corrosive to the culture of the sport. For others, though, the decision raised eyebrows. After all, tennis has seen legends lose their temper and survive without a ban. Whispers spread quickly among players. Reports emerged of younger stars feeling relieved, finally free of the tension that often accompanied facing Ostapenko on court. One insider noted that practice courts at major tournaments would sometimes fall into awkward silence when she walked by, the atmosphere tightening as everyone waited for the possibility of another confrontation. Now, with her suspended, that shadow seemed to lift. But not everyone was cheering. A handful of voices, particularly among veterans, cautioned against celebrating too quickly. They argued that fiery personalities have always been part of tennis's appeal. From Jimmy Connors to Mick Kyrgios, the sport has thrived on drama just as much as it has on rallies. To them, Ostapenko was cut from the same cloth. Volatile, yes, but compelling, and a ban they wore risked sanitizing the sport too much, stripping it of the unpredictable energy that keeps fans glued to the screen. Still, the louder chorus came from those who felt the decision was overdue. Several players spoke openly about the importance of respect both on and off the court. For them, this wasn't just about a single argument gone too far. It was about a pattern of behavior that threatened to overshadow the game itself. And in the end, that's why the ban resonated so strongly. It wasn't only punishment for Ostapenko. It was a warning to everyone else. Cross the line often enough and even talent won't save you. Fans take over the court of public opinion. If the locker room was split, the fans were anything but quiet. As soon as news of Jeļena Ostapenko's ban hit the internet, social media transformed into a battleground. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, every platform became flooded with highlight reels, opinion threads, and emotional posts dissecting the decision. Within hours, hashtags calling for accountability trended worldwide, and clips of Ostapenko's past meltdowns resurfaced with millions of views. For many fans, this ban wasn't just about one player. It was about what they believed tennis should stand for. Supporters of the decision flooded comment sections with phrases like "long overdue" and "finally some accountability," pointing to years of controversies they felt had gone unchecked. To them, Ostapenko's downfall represented a much-needed correction, a reminder that talent alone can't shield an athlete from consequences. But it wasn't all one-sided. A vocal minority rallied to her defense, insisting the punishment was too extreme. They highlighted her 2017 French Open triumph, her power on the baseline, and the entertainment factor she always brought to matches. Some even accused the tennis authorities of double standards, comparing her treatment to other players who had explosive tempers but managed to avoid such heavy consequences. Memes spread like wildfire, some mocking her reputation, others portraying her as a misunderstood anti-hero unfairly targeted by the establishment. The viral effect was undeniable. News outlets quickly picked up on the storm, amplifying both sides of the argument. YouTube creators churned out reaction videos dissecting every detail. While podcasts debated whether this was a turning point in how the sport polices itself, even casual fans who rarely followed tennis suddenly had an opinion, pulled in by the spectacle of it all. What made the fan reaction so powerful was the speed and scale. In a digital age where reputations can crumble overnight, Ostapenko's legacy was suddenly being rewritten in real time, not by officials or journalists, but by millions of voices online. And while some fans demanded her permanent removal, others were just as insistent that the sport had gone too far. The battle lines were drawn and the world was watching. Legends and media weigh in. When a ban like this makes headlines, it doesn't stay confined to fan chatter. It becomes a global talking point. Almost immediately, the biggest names in tennis history and the most influential voices in sports media jumped into the debate. For journalists, it was a gold mine. Every outlet from ESPN to BBC ran special segments dissecting Ostapenko's career, her controversies, and what this ban could mean for the future of the sport. Tennis legends, both past and present, didn't hold back either. Some former champions applauded the decision, stressing that tennis is built on discipline, respect, and tradition. To them, Ostapenko's repeated clashes represented a slow erosion of the values that made the sport different from others. They argued that her ban was less about silencing passion and more about protecting the integrity of the game itself. Others, however, offered a more sympathetic take. They pointed to the immense pressure athletes face, the loneliness of the tour, and the fact that mental struggles often manifest in ugly ways. To them, Ostapenko was more a victim of her inability to manage those pressures than a deliberate villain. Some even went as far as to suggest the ban could backfire, turning her into a martyr figure for fans who crave raw emotion and chaos in an otherwise polished sport. What stood out most was how personal many of these reactions felt. Andy Roddick, known for his candid analysis, was brutally direct in pointing out the irony of Ostapenko lecturing others on respect. Meanwhile, Naomi Osaka's remarks carried particular weight, emphasizing the damaging undertones of certain comments Ostapenko had made in the past. Their voices echoed far beyond the court, influencing not just fans, but casual observers who tuned in for the drama. In the media, panel shows debated endlessly. Was this ban a fair punishment or an overreaction? Was tennis holding Ostapenko accountable, or was it setting a dangerous precedent? Each segment added fuel to the fire. And with every headline, the narrative became bigger than just one player. It became a referendum on how tennis should deal with its most volatile stars, player solidarity and Taylor Townsend's grace. In the wake of the ban, one of the most striking aspects wasn't Ostapenko's silence, but the way other players stepped up, especially Taylor Townsend, the athlete who had been on the receiving end of her most infamous outburst. While Ostapenko's comments had stirred anger and disbelief, Townsend chose not to fan the flames. Instead, she responded with composure, acknowledging the weight of what was said, but refusing to let it define her. That grace didn't just earn her respect, it amplified the contrast between the two players. Towns' handling of the situation became a rallying point. Reporters asked her about the controversy, and though she could have easily played the victim card, she instead focused on broader issues of respect and accountability in tennis. That choice resonated deeply with fellow athletes, many of whom publicly praised her maturity. To fans and commentators, Towns' hand embodied the very values Ostapenko seemed to disregard: dignity, resilience, and class under pressure. The wave of support didn't stop with her. Other players, some of whom had been involved in past clashes with Ostapenko, spoke out in solidarity. Aryna Sabalenka hinted that the Latvian star's issues ran deeper than tennis, while Naomi Osaka highlighted how damaging certain comments can be, especially in a sport with such stark cultural dynamics. These weren't just casual remarks. They were powerful endorsements of the ban coming from some of the biggest names in the game. For once, the locker room seemed united around a single idea: enough was enough. Townsend's composure and the collective backing of her peers shifted the narrative from scandal to a larger conversation about respect and sport. The spotlight which had been on Ostapenko's meltdown now illuminated the strength of the community around her. And for tennis as a whole, that solidarity mattered. It signaled that while one player's reputation may have taken a hit, the sport itself was rallying to protect its standards and values. Townsend's rise in the aftermath wasn't just about winning matches. It was about becoming a symbol of professionalism when the game needed it most. The bigger picture for tennis. Ostapenko's ban might feel like the climax of one player's turbulent career. But in reality, it's about much more than that. It has forced tennis to confront uncomfortable questions about what the sport values, how it enforces standards, and where it draws the line between passion and disrespect. For decades, tennis has prided itself on being a sport of tradition: white clothing at Wimbledon, silent crowds, and players expected to carry themselves with grace. Yet at the same time, the game thrives on personalities, rivalries, and drama. Striking that balance has never been easy. The decision to ban a Grand Slam champion doesn't just set a precedent, it redraws the boundaries of acceptable behavior. Future players now know that repeated outbursts, however entertaining or headline-grabbing, come with serious risks. For the authorities, it's a declaration that tennis won't allow its reputation to be dragged through the mud, no matter how many fans a controversial player might attract. But the conversation doesn't end with discipline. Ostapenko's downfall has also highlighted the pressures athletes face and the importance of mental resilience. The modern game is grueling with endless travel, scrutiny from fans online, and a media cycle that never sleeps. Some voices in the community have urged tennis organizations not just to punish players when they break, but to provide more support to help them manage the demands of life on tour. What's clear is that the reaction to this ban has been bigger than anyone expected. From viral fan debates to candid remarks by legends, the ripple effects are undeniable. The sport is evolving, and the standards for what it means to represent tennis on a global stage are evolving with it. For Ostapenko, the future is uncertain. A ban doesn't have to mean the end of her career, but it will forever change the way she's remembered. And for tennis, this moment is a turning point. It's a reminder that respect, sportsmanship, and accountability aren't just lofty ideals. They're essential for the game's survival. The world will move on, but the lessons from this controversy will linger far longer than the headlines.